The sound of the doorbell startled me, piercing the quiet hum of the TV in my tiny apartment. My heart thumped hard as I stared at the door, wondering who could be on the other side. I didn't have visitors anymore, not since I left everything behind. I crept to the peephole, curiosity tingling at the edges of my anger. And there she was, Emma. My heart clenched at the sight of her face. The one person I thought I'd erased from my life stood there, as though the past 2 years hadn't happened. For a moment, I considered ignoring her, letting her knock until her knuckles bled. But I knew her persistence too well. If she had gone through the trouble of finding me, she wouldn't leave without a confrontation. I cracked the door open, the chain still hooked. "What the hell do you want?" Emma's eyes widened at my tone, but her expression didn't falter. "I just want to talk." "Liam, talk?" I laughed bitterly. "After everything? I told you if you walked out that door, we were done. You don't get to rewrite the ending." Her voice cracked. "I didn't think you'd leave without giving me a chance to explain." "Explain?" I flung the door wide open, the chain rattling like an exclamation point. "You've got some nerve. Come in, then. Say whatever you need to say and leave me alone." Emma stepped inside, the familiar scent of her perfume choking me with memories I didn't want to relive. She sat down on my worn-out couch, looking small, like a shadow of the woman I'd once known. "Can I have a glass of water?" she asked, her voice trembling. I turned to the kitchen, gripping the edge of the counter to steady myself. My mind reeled back to that night, the night everything fell apart. I had come home from work, exhausted but eager to spend the evening with her. But when I walked into our shared apartment, I found her standing in front of the mirror, dressed in a sleek black dress that clung to her curves. Her makeup was flawless, her eyes bright with excitement. "I didn't know we had plans," I said, shrugging off my jacket. She didn't look at me. "We don't." "Then why are you dressed like that?" Her hesitation spoke volumes before her words did. "I have a date." The word hit me like a punch to the gut. "A date? With who?" "His name's Lucas," she said, her tone defensive. "He's a new guy at work. It's not what you think. He just needed someone to accompany him to a party." "A party?" I snapped. "With another man? And you're dressed like that for him?" She glared at me. "You're overreacting. It's just a work thing. He didn't want to go alone. Does he know you're married?" "What does it matter? It's not like I'm cheating on you." Her voice rose, her defiance fueling my anger. "Not yet," I said through gritted teeth. "But that dress? That's not for a professional event, Emma. And we both know what happens at those parties. You expect me to believe this is innocent?" "I'm going, Liam. Don't wait up." Her words echoed in my mind as she left, slamming the door behind her. It wasn't just the act of going that broke me. It was the way she dismissed my feelings, the way she prioritized a stranger over her own husband. I had warned her. I had told her what would happen if she walked out that door. And when she left, she made her choice. That night I waited. I paced the apartment, my thoughts spiraling. Was I overreacting? Was I being paranoid? But then the phone rang at 1 a.m., dragging me out of my turmoil. "Hello." My voice was groggy with exhaustion. A familiar voice cut through the line. "Liam, you need to hear this." It was Sophia, Emma's so-called best friend. The woman I had always despised for her reckless influence. Before I could respond, she held the phone up to the chaos on the other end. Moans, laughter, and Emma's unmistakable voice filled the receiver. "Oh God, yes, don't stop." I slammed the phone down, my chest heaving. Seconds later, it rang again. I yanked the cord out of the wall, silencing the nightmare. By morning, I was gone. I packed what little I could fit in my truck and left the city, leaving behind the life I had built with Emma. I didn't leave a note, didn't answer her frantic calls. I wanted her to feel the emptiness I felt, to understand the weight of what she had done. Now, 2 years later, she sat on my couch, looking at me with tear-filled eyes, as though she had the right to ask for forgiveness. I handed her the glass of water and sat down across from her, keeping a safe distance. "Say what you came here to say." Emma took a sip of the water. "I don't have all night," her hands trembling as she set the glass on the coffee table. For a moment, She seemed to struggle with her words, her gaze darting between me and the floor. Finally, she exhaled, her shoulders sagging. Liam, I didn't mean for things to happen the way they did. You have to believe me. Believe you? I leaned forward, my voice cold and sharp. After everything? After the lies? The betrayal? Why the hell should I believe a word you say? Her eyes welled with tears, but I felt no sympathy. You don't understand. I didn't. She stopped herself, swallowing hard. I didn't go to that party to hurt you. No. I barked out a bitter laugh. You went in a dress that wasn't for me, with a man who wasn't me, to a party where I told you not to go. And you still think you didn't mean to hurt me? I was pressured. She cried, her voice cracking. Sophia begged me to go. She said she needed someone there she could trust. And I thought, trust? I cut her off. You thought abandoning your husband for a party of degenerates was an act of trust? Spare me, Emma. I've heard enough of your excuses. Her face flushed, and for the first time, anger flared in her eyes. Do you know what happened that night? Do you even care? I folded my arms, staring at her with unyielding resolve. Enlighten me. She bit her lip, her hands clenching in her lap. I didn't want to go, but Sophia wouldn't stop. She said if I didn't show up, she'd tell everyone at work I was some prudish, stuck-up housewife who let her husband control her life. So I caved. I dressed up because she insisted, and I went, thinking I could leave early. But you didn't, I said flatly. No, she admitted, her voice trembling. I stayed. First, it was harmless. Lucas hovered around me all night, but I kept my distance. I danced with a few people, had a couple of drinks. Spare me the play-by-play. Get to the part where you betrayed me. Her jaw tightened. I didn't betray you, Liam. I was drugged. I froze, the words cutting through my anger like a blade. What did you just say? Sophia gave me a drink, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I thought it was just wine, but it wasn't. Halfway through the party, I started to feel off, dizzy, numb. I tried to leave, but my legs wouldn't cooperate. Sophia led me to one of the bedrooms and told me to rest. That's when her voice broke, and she looked away, tears streaming down her face. I felt a chill run down my spine, but I refused to let my expression soften. And that's when what? She shook her head, her sobs muffled by her trembling hands. When I woke up, I wasn't alone. There were men, strangers, in the room. They used me, Liam. I tried to fight them off, but I couldn't. I couldn't stop them. My chest tightened as her words sank in. A part of me wanted to believe her, to reach out and hold her, but another part screamed at me to stay guarded. And Sophia? What did she do? She orchestrated it, Emma whispered. She admitted it to the police later. She said she thought if I just let go, I'd enjoy it. That I'd thank her for helping me loosen up. Her face contorted with pain. But I didn't. I hated every second of it. I clenched my fists, anger bubbling beneath the surface. Did you call the police that night? Yes, she said quickly. I went straight to the hospital and reported everything. They found traces of drugs in my system, Rohypnol and ecstasy. The police investigated, but most of the men got away with it because Sophia claimed I had consented. And yet you never thought to call me? My voice was ice. I tried, she exclaimed, but you were already gone. I came home to an empty apartment, Liam. No note, no explanation. You vanished. Because I knew, I said, my voice low. I heard it, Emma. Sophia called me that night. Let me listen to everything. I didn't need an explanation. You made your choice when you walked out that door. Her sobs grew louder, and for a moment, the room was filled with nothing but the sound of her broken cries. I wanted to feel something, anything, but all I could summon was exhaustion. I didn't choose this, she said through her tears. I didn't choose to be violated, Liam. And I didn't choose to lose you. Please, you have to believe me. I stood, my body rigid. It doesn't matter anymore, Emma. Whatever happened that night, you made the first choice. You chose to go. You chose to ignore me when I begged you to stay. And now you have to live with the consequences. She looked up at me, her eyes red and swollen. I still love you. Then you should have thought about that before you walked out that door. Emma's shoulders slumped as though the weight of my words physically struck her. For a long moment, the only sound in the room was the ticking of the clock on the wall. She looked utterly defeated, yet I could see something flicker in her eyes, a stubborn determination that refused to die. I sold everything to find you, Liam, she said softly, her voice trembling but resolute. The house, the car, everything I had. I spent months searching. Do you know why? I crossed my arms, refusing to be swayed by her theatrics. Because you couldn't stand the idea of being the one left behind. She shook her head, tears glistening on her cheeks. No, because I couldn't live with myself knowing that the last words you heard from me were filled with selfishness and anger. I needed you to know the truth. The truth? I scoffed. The truth is, I warned you, Emma. I told you what would happen if you walked out that door, and you didn't care. You made your bed, and now you're here trying to change the sheets after the fact. Her jaw tightened, and she rose to her feet, her fists clenching at her sides. Do you think this is easy for me? Do you think I don't hate myself for what happened? For not listening to you? I know I screwed up, Liam, but I didn't deserve what they did to me. And I don't deserve this from you. The anger in her voice surprised me, but I didn't flinch. Deserve? I spat. You think this is about what you deserve? This is about what I deserve, Emma. I deserve loyalty. I deserve respect. And you threw all of that away the moment you put that dress on for another man. She took a step toward me, her eyes blazing. You don't think I know that? I've lived with that guilt every single day for 2 years. I've relived that night in my head over and over again, wishing I could go back and change everything. But I can't. All I can do is try to make it right. It's too late for that, I said coldly. Is it? She challenged. Or are you just too stubborn to admit that you still care? Because if you didn't, you wouldn't be standing here arguing with me. Her words struck a nerve, but I refused to let her see it. This isn't about caring, Emma. This is about trust. And you shattered mine beyond repair. She looked at me, her expression softening. I know I did, but you need to know something. I didn't come here expecting forgiveness. I came here because I needed you to hear the truth. Even if you never want to see me again after this. I turned away from her, staring out the window at the darkened street below. Her words hung heavy in the air, but I couldn't let them pierce the walls I had built around myself. You've said what you came to say, I muttered. Now leave. I'm not going anywhere, she said firmly. Not until you hear all of it. I spun around, my patience wearing thin. What more is there to say, Emma? You've already admitted you ignored me, you betrayed me, and you destroyed everything we had. What could possibly make a difference now? She squared her shoulders, her voice steady despite the tears streaming down her face. The difference is, I've spent the last 2 years trying to make amends. I sued every single person who had a hand in what happened to me that night. I went to the police, to court, to anyone who would listen. I fought for justice when I could have just given up. And you know what I realized through all of it? I didn't respond, but she continued anyway. I realized that none of it mattered if I couldn't face you. If I couldn't tell you that I'm sorry, not just for what happened that night, but for everything I did to push you away, for not listening to you, for taking you for granted. I know I can't undo the past, but I'm here, standing in front of you, asking for a chance to prove that I can be better. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. For the first time, I saw not the woman who had betrayed me, but the woman I had fallen in love with all those years ago. The woman who had made mistakes but was now standing here, raw and vulnerable, fighting for something she believed in. But could I let go of the pain? Could I trust her again after everything that had happened? You should have thought about all of this before you walked out that door, I said finally, my voice void of emotion. You can't just show up here and expect everything to be okay. I don't expect that, she said quickly. I know it's not that simple, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes. Liam, I'm not giving up on us. There is no us, I said, my voice cracking despite my efforts to stay strong. There hasn't been for a long time. Emma stepped closer, her eyes searching mine. Maybe not, but there could be. Her words hung between us like a fragile thread, threatening to snap under the weight of everything unsaid. I wanted to believe her, to let go of the anger and pain that had consumed me for so long. But could I risk my heart again? I need time, I said finally, my voice barely above a whisper. Time to figure out if I can ever look at you the same way again. Emma nodded, her tears flowing freely. Take all the time you need. I'll be here waiting. She turned and walked out the door, leaving me alone with my thoughts. The silence was deafening, but for the first time in years, it didn't feel suffocating. Felt open, like a crack of light in the darkness. And I wasn't sure whether to embrace it or slam it shut. The days that followed Emma's visit were a blur of conflicting emotions. I couldn't shake the image of her standing in my apartment, her voice trembling as she poured out her heart. Her words echoed in my mind, battling against the fortress of anger and resentment I had built over the past 2 years. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't deny the flicker of doubt she had planted. What if she was telling the truth? What if she really was as much a victim as she claimed to be? And if that was the case, had I been punishing her for something beyond her control? I wrestled with these questions late into the night, my thoughts racing in circles. Every time I considered reaching out to her, a fresh wave of bitterness washed over me, reminding me of the betrayal that had torn us apart. Then, one evening, as I sat alone in my apartment, staring at the empty walls, my phone buzzed with a message. It was from Emma. I'm not asking you to forgive me, the message read, but if you ever want to talk, I'll be at the park near your place tomorrow at 4 p.m. If you don't show, I'll understand. I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the delete button. I didn't owe her anything. I didn't have to go. And yet, a part of me, a part one had tried to bury, was curious. What more could she possibly have to say? The next day, I found myself walking to the park, my hands shoved deep in my pockets. I told myself I was going out of morbid curiosity, not because I wanted to see her, but as I approached the park bench where she sat, her eyes lighting up when she saw me, I felt a pang of something I couldn't quite name. Liam, she said, standing up as I approached. You came. Don't read too much into it, I muttered, sitting down on the bench. I'm here, but that doesn't mean anything. She nodded, her hands twisting nervously in her lap. I know. I needed to see you one last time. Last time? I asked, glancing at her. I'm moving, she said quietly. I thought maybe if I stayed close, I could convince you to give me another chance. But I realize now that I can't force you to forgive me. So I'm leaving. For real this time. Her words caught me off guard. Where are you going? Back to my parents' place, she said. It's not much, but it's a fresh start. And I think we both need that. I didn't respond, my mind spinning. The thought of her leaving for good felt strangely heavy, like a door slamming shut on a chapter one wasn't ready to end. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, she continued, her voice soft. But I hope one day, you'll remember the good times we had and know that I truly loved you. I clenched my fists, struggling to keep my emotions in check. If you loved me, Emma, you wouldn't have walked out that door. Tears filled her eyes, but she didn't look away. You're right. I made a terrible mistake, and I've paid for it every day since. But that doesn't mean I stopped loving you. Her words cut deep, breaking through the walls I had built. For a moment, I saw the woman I had fallen in love with, the woman who had been my partner, my confidant, my everything. But could I let go of the pain? Could I find it in my heart to give her a second chance? I don't know if I can forgive you, I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. But I know I can't keep hating you. It's eating me alive. She reached out, her hand brushing against mine. That's all I needed to hear. Thank you, Liam. We sat in silence, the weight of the past hanging between us. When she finally stood to leave, I didn't stop her. I watched as she walked away, her figure growing smaller with each step. And for the first time in 2 years, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: peace.